All right, so Pete, it has come to my attention that the name for the next generation virtual world is Project Sensor. It has been leaked, and I went to a tattoo parlor here down the street and had it tattooed. But now I hear that it's not permanent; it's just internal for the time being. Is that correct? That name?
Yeah, as you've heard, we did confirm this week that Project Sansar is the code name we've been using internally. We do plan to use that name in the project's early external stages, like when we invite the first creators to the platform this summer, but we don't plan on making it the final brand name for the platform. That's something we'll reveal in the future.
Let's just do the station ID and get on with it.
Of course. Hi, I'm Pete Linden, Senior Director of Global Communications here at Linden Lab, and you are listening to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley.
Thanks, Pete.
I hope you enjoy the tattoo, but it probably won't be what we ultimately call this thing.
And I probably have to pay to remove it now. Damn it! Hello there and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley. My name is Draxter Dupre. This again is a shorter show this week without Joe, who is like a whirlwind upgrading with attention to detail. 1920s Berlin from prims to full-on mesh, and let me tell you, it's beautiful. Everyone has to visit and cheer her on should you see her outside of her skybox. Anyway, loads of news are happening, which we will not cover, such as Oculus consumer version coming Q1 2016. There are excellent blogs out there covering such items as the leaking of the code name for Linden Labs' next generation virtual world. As you heard in the station ID, Pete Linden mentioned it. It is confirmed that this is a temporary name. By the way, Strawberry Singh, who did the show's thumbnail this week, thank you, reminded us on Twitter that in Sanskrit, Sansar means world, so perhaps this is an appropriate name to stick around longer than Linden Lab had planned after all. In any event, speaking of the show's thumbnail, it depicts my guest today, Cecilia D'Anastasio, a young and gifted freelance journalist with Vice and a researcher at the Nation Institute in New York. According to her bio, Cecilia's work focuses on escapism, justice, tech, and women's issues. Now, we're going to focus on escapism, as you might have guessed. Is that what brought her to write about Second Life? No, not really, because her article, Avatar IRL, focuses on a transgender woman, Veronica Sidwell, who was able to test out how it feels to be a woman in Second Life prior to seeking treatment, and her experience in Second Life gave her the confidence to follow through with a real-world sex change procedure, and she even got her legal name changed to her avatar name. Cecilia's article, Joe and I have talked about it on and off over the past few weeks, is a great example, in my humble opinion, how Second Life reporting can be done the right way, and it's really not rocket science. Just apply the same scrutiny, attention to nuance, and basic ethics when you come in world, right? Right? Well, apparently not a lot of journalists are doing this. It's still a lot easier to use Second Life as this convenient punching bag ready to whip out on a slow news day. But let's talk to Cecilia now. I taped this interview a week ago, and in the conversation we're going to jump back and forth between talking about the Second Life story, but also about another recent article of hers she wrote for Vice about gaming addiction, entitled Inside the Tragic Obsessive World of Video Game Addicts, a must read. Here's Cecilia D'Anastasio about why she wanted to do a story about Second Life in the first place.
I've been thinking about doing this story for a very long time. I've been very interested in the idea of how people are affected by virtual worlds, by MMORPGs, and by the time they spend in their avatar bodies. I don't think that time is inconsequential. Nick Yee, a psychologist, suggests that, these people spend on average 20 hours a week in an avatar body that you customize, that you love. And so I thought for a while about what would be the easiest way to explain that to people who wouldn't normally care at all.
Maybe even people who don't care, but also people, I want to get into this later a little bit more, people who have this preconception that might be actually a pathology, right? spending too much time in a non-existing persona. That's what kind of the mainstream news seems to be, regurgitating all the time, that kind of angle.
Absolutely, and that's complicated. I'd love to talk about that later. But in trying to find a way to talk about this in the most palatable way, it seemed like finding trans women who had spent time when they were male-bodied in an avatar of the opposite gender and had decided to transition because of that. It seemed like the easiest way to explain how powerful these experiences are to players and to people who spend time in virtual worlds.
So this came from your interest in that subject matter. Then how difficult a sell was it for Motherboard Vice? What was the response from outlets to let you pursue this story?
I only pitched it to Motherboard. I've been thinking about this idea for a number of months, but I thought Motherboard would be the best place for it to land. And my editor, who is absolutely incredible, his name is Brian Anderson, was really excited about the idea. They were doing a whole themed week called Goodbye Meatbags, which is really funny. It's about meatbags, our bodies, people who were using technology to escape the boundaries of our bodies. And I thought this would be a good fit for that theme.
So this is fascinating. We talk about this on the podcast all the time. Did you ever go up against that perception that I mentioned earlier, the MMOs and maybe Second Life in particular as this haven for people who do not have a first life? It's such an easy thing, and it's still being sort of repeated in the mainstream media. Did you ever run up against that on at Motherboard?
I wrote a feature for Vice.com about video game addiction just a few months ago. And I will say before I talk about that I'm someone who has spent a lot of time playing MMORPGs, Final Fantasy XI, Guild Wars back in the day, Counter-Strike, EverQuest. I mean, I've played a lot of these games in the past, not so much anymore, although Final Fantasy XIV is really good.
Right. So in other words, you're a propagandist. You're basically from the as if you were from the tobacco industry trying to tell me that smoking is not bad.
No. I mean,
tongue in cheek.
I've played these games, but I've always had a very active social life and other hobbies. It's so possible, but I do think that people, especially people who have difficulty acclimating to real world demands, people who have autism or learning disabilities in school, may be more compelled to spend more time in video games because they don't receive as much validation outside of the virtual world.
What was unclear to me in the article is what are the very specifics about gaming addiction versus these other addictions that were cited?
What makes it difficult to overcome is the fact that a lot of people don't believe that gaming addiction exists. A lot of experts don't even believe that it exists. There's a lot of debate within the medical community about whether or not it's a compulsive disorder, such as anorexia, for example, a behavioral disorder, or a true addiction. The way it's diagnosed is through a combination of signifiers of gambling addiction and substance addiction.
Well, I personally don't doubt that it's real, but I was just wondering, what is the difference? I mean, those symptoms are, in fact, pretty much the same across the board with all these other addictions, right?
Yeah, and I can't emphasize enough that video games are not inherently bad, and someone can get addicted to absolutely anything or any behavior at all. It's just video games are a really good venue to talk about these kind of compulsive behavioral disorders because the escapist aspect is so manifest and discernible when you're talking about video games as opposed to when you're talking about alcoholism.
In the article, you go across the entire age spectrum, which is fascinating because we usually always sort of, or in the mainstream public or the public discussion, it's always young people who check out of reality for whatever reason. But you cited older folks. Patricia, in the article, she's 69. She was completely addicted. She abandoned pretty much her relationship and then cared for her dying husband, and really regretted that. So it's really not an issue of a specific generation or age.
No, it's absolutely not. Nick Yee, who founded the Daedalus Project, where he surveyed, I think, 50,000 MMO users, discovered that the average age of the MMO gamer, I think, is way older than the 18-year-old boys that you usually think are playing these games, and more gamers than you would think are girls too. What was cool doing my research is that I only had like 2 or 3 sources who were like 18 to 23-year-old men, and I actually spoke with a lot of older women and older men who had moved on to gaming addiction from addictions that would be more age appropriate to them traditionally.
That sounds so cool. Well, again, going to Vegas over the weekend is kind of like run its course, right? I'm going to go into a different field of addiction now.
I think the most interesting takeaway from that story was the fact that video game addiction kind of is indicative of other problems in people's lives. What I did see was a lot of individuals, my main source included, who were having difficulties socializing in school, or doing well in school, and took that out on their video games. And the more time they spent in a video game, the less time they spent cultivating skills in the real world. And it became this cycle where they felt inadequate even more, and they would spend more time in the game.
But again, then we have, and you have seen these people as well, a positive reverberation back into their interaction with quote unquote real people, right? I mean, it goes both ways.
Yeah, and I think that's really beautiful. Tom Belstorff, whom I interviewed for my motherboard article, Avatar IRL, he's doing some research right now that's so exciting, and it's about how virtual worlds can benefit people with physical, I think it's limited to physical disabilities, in that they can walk and dance and socialize and be confident in ways that they can't in the real world. I think that video games and virtual worlds are hugely important in that way, but obviously there's nuance, and for some people they can be addictive and detrimental to their lives.
I just want to say for the record, I'm certainly, I don't want to gloss over the complexity of that issue. I personally don't want to seem to be denying that addiction exists and that it is a serious issue. I'm just really kind of tired of the black and white type of coverage. So really kudos to you to pursue these stories with more shades of gray in between. Like I told you in the email, I mean, I'm really impressed with your article. And the Second Life community is so happy to see sort of the world that they feel so strongly about being reflected in a positive way, that you pursued that story. Now, how difficult was it to get people to talk, essentially? Because I mean, I do this monthly series, and the biggest obstacle really is to get people, and I respect it at the same time, you know what I mean? I mean, people are very private, and that's a great thing that they can pursue this. And then somebody comes in and they're already kind of apprehensive because of the negative coverage, and here comes yet another journalist. So tell me a little bit about how that kind of worked. I mean,
I completely understand that why I was approached with so much apprehension. I received a lot of vitriolic responses to my original post. I think
on the right, you put let's clarify. You posted on the original forums, and then you got a bad response there. Go away, journalist.
Then there was the fact that I called Second Life a video game in my post, I believe, which was a huge mistake. I had played Second Life, I think, I had been in Second Life in, I think, 2006 or 2007. And even though I was doing that for a little bit, I never really made the distinction in my head between video game and virtual world. And I think that was extremely, I mean, that would be so off-putting to me if I spent a lot of my time in Second Life too.
People inside the world butt heads about that all the time.
Oh, I believe it, because if you think even about Dungeons and Dragons, for example, it's a role-playing game, but sometimes you have a whole game where there is no combat. And so if you're just sitting around your table and you're role-playing with other people, is that still a game, and how different is that from Second Life?
That speaks to this very unique nature of Second Life culture, that you can have these different interpretations kind of can live alongside each other, I guess, right? In other games, it would be a little bit more difficult sell if you say it's a virtual world. Is World of Warcraft a virtual world? I don't know. Are you still with me, or is your attention span that has been lowered by your excessive playing of fantasy, of whatever game you mentioned earlier, has been so depleted that you... Sorry, I said I don't play that many video games anymore. How could I have time? Journalism
Journalism takes, oh my God, 12, 13-hour days.
I think people need to understand how long it takes to really pursue a story. You already mentioned you played games, but Second Life still has that perception even among gamers, a negative one. There's a specific sort of view attached from how gamers look at Second Life. Did you ever encounter that when you went in there 2006, 2007, where people said, well, what the heck are you doing? Or did you ever have to kind of justify it versus maybe other games that were not that difficult to justify?
On a personal level, I really didn't talk about my gaming that much to my friends. I do now because I've met more gamers. But when I was younger and in high school, I mean, most of the gamers I knew were men and were very insular about it, and I really just didn't have anyone to talk with about it. Now I know many more women and many more feminist men who aren't going to say, "Oh my God, like you're playing this," or "Wow, didn't expect you to be good at Super Smash Brothers." So I didn't really receive any sort of reaction about playing Second Life.
It substantially has changed, I guess. Although then again, with Gamergate, there's a resurgence of a small contingent of people who don't like women coming in and taking away their thing. 12-year-olds. All right, let's not focus on that. Now, the story that you pursued, I cut you off there. So you posted in the forums, then you got a kind of a backlash a little bit, and then how did you arrive meeting Veronica? How difficult was it? Take me through those steps.
Veronica saw my post. She bravely reached out to me, and we began emailing. We scheduled a few times to talk. Missed a few of them because she's a picture framer and she comes home from work pretty late. And we ended up meeting nearby the Alamo in Second Life in a white gazebo surrounded by flowers and chirping birds. It was an incredible experience. I interviewed her in this gazebo and over voice chat. I am just blown away by how brave this woman is to speak with someone she doesn't know about things that are so personal and be willing to be a spokesperson for trans women in MMOs and in virtual worlds on an international media platform. That's incredible. And she's so soft-spoken too.
Can you summarize, because I'm going to lead into this too, but can you summarize a little bit what her story is?
Sure. So Veronica Sidwell was a male-bodied individual who always had known that she was trans, but she never really felt that she could go out in public with makeup and a dress. She thought she would be ridiculed. And, you know, many trans women are assaulted and ridiculed when they leave the house. So her fear, I think, was justified in a lot of ways. She ended up finding Second Life and made a female avatar, Veronica Sidwell, and became immersed in the virtual world. After just a few months in Second Life, she was DJing punk music in clubs, and she was touring all of these reconstructions of worlds and dystopias in Second Life. She'd made so many friends. She met up with other trans people in their houses to talk, and she experimented sexually with people of both genders, I think in some sort of motel. But after a few months of playing, she decided, I feel so much more comfortable in my female body than I do in my male body in the physical world. She's been on hormone therapy for 4.5 years. She went to Thailand in 2012 to have a sex change. And she says that she's never been happier. The most beautiful and interesting thing about this is that she actually legally changed her to Veronica Sidwell. She would not disclose what her name was when she was male-bodied, as a token to the avatar that lent her the confidence to make this change.
It's just amazing. And again, you know, my congratulations to this piece, you pursuing it and writing it up in such a way, and I mean that the chance of her responding to your inquiry. Can you just in general just throw in what goes into finding people? Shed a little bit light on the craft of writing up something.
I think it's very important to approach a story without a thesis. I think it's very important to approach your sources without any idea of what they will tell you. But it's always important to choose the right sources. For example, going into my story about video game addiction, all I knew was that I wanted to find people who played a lot of video games. And some people who had been playing a lot of video games thought it was really great. Some people thought it was really horrible. And that makes for a nuanced story. And I think that it would be a disservice to any journalist audience to write anything but a nuanced story, unless, of course, there are word limits. I actually find that, like, even sometimes I'll post on Reddit or other fora around the internet to find sources. It definitely seems sketchy to just have a journalist hanging out in your space. It can seem intrusive, but people really love to talk about themselves. I think that's pretty universal.
But isn't it also a problem? I mean, we've had these occasional sort of scandals right now with Rolling Stone article about the gang rape. That sometimes when people want to talk about themselves, I mean, you got to have some obviously a little bit of scrutiny about people who want to talk about themselves. Maybe those are not always the people you want to talk to because I don't know, they have an agenda or they might massage their own story in order to kind of get into the limelight a little bit.
I'm actually a fact checker too, and so my day job is other people send me their articles and I just research everything they say and I cross-check their quotes with the sources and with their friends and things like that. So I think more publications should have fact checkers because, I mean, stuff like the Jackie Rolling Stone gang rape situation, that can slide. But I will say this, Rolling Stone has the best fact checkers in the business. And sometimes what happens is that a fact checker tells you your source is full of shit and the editor just lets it slide anyway. So it's really a system of checks and balances that's delicate within every publication.
Why do you think the editor does that? Because he's under pressure to deliver the story on time?
I really can't say.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just hope that our regular listeners, Wolf Blitzer and Greta von Susteren, who I don't want to call journalists, that they hear you when you say, when you have a story, don't have a thesis before the story. So someone your age pursuing journalism, if someone would dangle a lot of dollar bills in front of you and say, you can come join CNN or any other sort of corporate news source, would you do it? You could move into a bigger apartment.
Yeah, you can see my apartment. I like freelancing a lot right now. The only important thing is that people are interested in my ideas and are willing to publish them. I don't have any pro or con view on joining a larger media organization.
When I have these conversations, a lot of people maintain there's still very good pieces that are being done at CNN, for instance, and people kind of maintain it when I'm in it and when I have access to this operation and I kind of the argument I can retain my integrity and I can put these stories on the air and then I have a larger audience. So that's an argument that I hear all the time from younger journalists. Is that something that you would agree with? I mean, at a hypothetical, offer to you to go to, I don't know, let's just say 60 Minutes, for instance, which I'm not saying is bad. I'm not making a judgment on them, but they're still part of an operation. There are certain things that they have to kind of drill down and package in a certain way to suit the audience. There might be corporate pressures, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, most news organizations, except for The Nation, obviously, have corporate pressures and do condense what they write to make it palatable to a diverse audience. And sometimes sources believe that that's a disservice to them and to the nuances that are inherent in their lives and in those situations. But honestly, it's the way journalism and it's the way writing has always been.
Yeah, but for example, Vice is tackling stories in a way. This stuff is also expensive. I mean, people are right there, as much as these big these big American institutions are sort of downsizing. For example, overseas coverage. Vice sends people out there. There's this amazing to me. There's no shortage of people who want to go there, and there's no shortage, I think, of people who Americans who want to know this stuff. My home country of Germany, they still have a very well-financed public broadcasting operation, so they pay their people, and they have bureaus overseas and stuff like that. So there's not that need of a niche like Vice is doing, if you will, but so they're filling this niche. And I'm just curious why the big organizations are not realizing, hey, there's actually a hunger for international stuff, and people don't always just want the black and white horse race and that kind of BS.
That's a great question. I love what Vice is doing because, The conversation in media for a number of years was no one likes international news, no one likes long-form journalism.
Exactly.
And Vice is saying, you guys are full of shit. People love international news and people love long-form journalism. There was some sort of poll that came out the other day that showed that some of the most well-read pieces on BuzzFeed even are their longer-form pieces.
So that was Cecilia D'Anastasio, and more power to her with that focus on making it in the harsh world of independent journalism. We're also linking to my interview with Nick Yee and Tom Berlsdorf, who were both on this podcast, for some context. So check out the blog if you subscribe to the show on Stitcher. By the way, you should subscribe to the show on Stitcher and on iTunes. But this is the end of the show already, so sorry Jo was not here with us. She will be back next week. I have to run myself to the day job. Yes, I do have one of those. But before I go, let me remind you, the Silicon Valley Virtual Reality Convention and Expo is happening at the San Jose Convention Center May 18th and 19th. Thousands of square feet, chock full of VR gear, headsets, treadmills, Philip Rosedales, Ebba Altbergs, Noni de la Peñas, talking about stuff, me running around with a microphone all day. So if you're in that physical area of San Jose, click on the SVVR banner to the right on our blog and sign up with the discount code mentioned there. It'll be a blast. And of course, we will play plenty of the audio that I will be gathering the next few weeks on this podcast after the event, and you will hear everything you need to know about the ongoing VR resurgence. Also, Spiegel TV in Germany is currently streaming the documentary Virtualize It, documentary that features Matt P, Humanoid Animations, Mimi Ali, the musician, and a guy who uses Minecraft to teach chemistry and coding. No English subtitles yet. They're coming in a week or two, but this is the first time I saw the film, and it's really well done. I'm in there with Nylon Pinkney. You see a little bit behind the scenes how the videos are being put together. Great film director Phil Toma really deserves a big applause for getting it right and focusing on creativity on this one. So wait for the English subtitles or learn a little German by watching it now. We're going out today with music from Terry Lynn Melody, a favorite of ours in the realm of Second Life musicians. As we're taping this show, it's her birthday. Happy birthday, Terry. And you can also vote for her on artistsignal.com. She's currently number 2, and if she wins, then she will get $10,000 to produce an album. So vote for her, artistsignal.com. Here's Terry Lynn Melody with a tune called Watch That Turn. That's it for the show. Thanks for listening. Enjoy and have a great weekend. Bye.
Here comes trouble. You should let me pass. I know your heart starts pumping, 'cause I move so fast. He's my warning boy. You could crash and burn. No, it takes real nerve to handle these curves. Watch that turn. You turn the key, boy. Look me in the eye. Yeah, you shifted gears, son, when you flashed that smile. You rammed my engine when you call me hun. You better hold on tight, 'cause you're mine. Here I come. Here goes trouble. You should let me pass, but your heart starts pumping.
Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. Show supported by Leap Motion, Stitcher, Fateware by Damien Fate, Giza Creations, Arrows Avatars, Maven Homes, Mad Bee Productions, Bot Girls Identity Circus, Ison, Caravel Design, Vika Creations, Humanoid Animations, Loki Elliott, Botanical, Death Row Designs, Fallen Gods Incorporated, What's Next, Abra Animations, Blue Moon Enterprises, Avacon, and Landscapes Unlimited. Contact the show via Skype, Drax Files, Avatar, Drax Files, or email radio@draxfiles.com.